John Tory came into office with high expectations. After 4 raucous years with Rob Ford, Torontonians were looking for a different approach at City Hall. The mayor recently passed his first budget with a 3.2% tax increase by a vote of 42 to 2. However, to get his budget passed, he had to break a campaign pledge and increase TTC fares. To look at Tory's first 100 days, I'm joined by veteran City Hall watcher and Now Magazine's contributor, Ben Spurr. Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, it's been just over 100 days since John Tory took over as mayor of the city. Mm-hmm. How would you rate his first 100 days?
I think, he's still kind of in that honeymoon period to some extent. He's still got a lot of opinion polls show he's got a lot of popularity among the public. I think he's done a few smart things to really, make, I think when mayors get into office, they want to get kind of quick wins a lot of the time, mm-hmm. just to show that they're, that they can succeed at the job essentially. And he's done that pretty well in terms of, he's got some announced new TTC funding. He's launched a major traffic congestion crackdown, which I think seems to be popular, even though we're not entirely sure how effective it's been, but mm-hmm. I think that's something that's resonated with the public. So those things have been good. There's also been some hiccups. He was not a councillor. He's never served on council. So there are a couple of things that seem kind of like rookie mistakes to some extent. He made it look like we were going to get a lot of money from the province to fix the budget. Announced that twice, really. So we thought that we were going to get money, and then we thought we were going to get a loan, and then it turned out we didn't even get the loan, so that was a bit of a hiccup. Another kind of hiccup with the ice rink closures. He made it look like he announced a deal that the corporation had come in and saved the ice rinks to keep them open a little longer, but it turned out that the company had a conflict with the city, so couldn't make that donation. So that kind of seemed just a little like he got a little overeager or a little optimistic about some things that didn't turn out as well as he thought.
Well, compare John Tory's first 100 days with, let's say, his predecessors, Rob Ford mm-hmm. and David Miller. Mm-hmm. How do you think he stacks up on a 100-day watch? I have to say I wasn't reporting on City Hall for either of those predecessors' first 100 days, but I think it is typical of mayors to move very quickly on achievable goals in the first part of their term. So Rob Ford, famously killed the car tax mm-hmm. Very early on, got City Council to declare TTC an essential service. Those kind of things that he had promised during his campaign, mm-hmm. that's what you want to do. You want to seal up some quick wins right away. Now, he just recently won a major vote, his first budget mm-hmm. by 42 to 2. Mm-hmm. The only two people to oppose him or to vote against it was the former mayor, Rob Ford, mm-hmm. and Councillor Giorgio Mammoliti. Mm-hmm. How did he manage to get both the right and the left to support his budget?
Well, I think that is a part because he is the new mayor. I think he won't have as much an easy time in his next few budgets. And so I think sometimes the council votes in recognition that the mayor has a strong mandate from the people. He's just come in, he's just won the election, mm-hmm. so they're willing to support him. But I think that actually that 42 to 2 vote is a little bit misleading in terms of there are a lot of concerns among some members of council about the amount of revenue that the city has, and so the actual vote the day before on the tax increase was not nearly as unanimous. And you have councillors like Gord Perks who were pushing for a higher increase. There have councillors like Shelley Carroll who is playing a key role in the Tory administration, talking about the need for more revenue tools. Even the city manager has come forward with that. So even though there was a lot of support for the budget, there is a lot of concern, I think, about Tory's unwillingness to consider new revenue tools, and that's going to be a conversation that goes on.
Ben, what are some of the highlights from the mayor's budget? There's always a concern that some services will be cut. During the Ford administration, there was talk about parks being cut back, rinks, etc. Mm-hmm. Are we seeing any of that in this budget?
Not so far. What you are seeing is that things are getting more expensive for people. So they raised garbage rates, pickup rates by 3%. They raised some recreation fees, I believe, as well. The big piece about the garbage is that right now people get a rebate on the amount that they pay. and that's been drastically reduced. So everyone's going to be paying, I think, 58% more for their garbage bin that they own. So
does that include also the recycle or just the
no, I believe it's just the bin. Yeah, because the
the
garbage,
black bins.
Yeah. Because they want people. What they're trying to do. One thing is they need to raise money, and this is. It's sort of everyone talks about the inflationary tax increase on property taxes, but there's kind of going around that and raising money in other ways, and this is one of them. So so that's one thing, but they're also trying to encourage people to, if you switch to a smaller bin, obviously it's cheaper. They're trying to encourage people to recycle and to divert waste, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Now, John Tory staked his campaign on a platform of smart track.
Yeah.
Where are we with that? Now that we have the budget passed, where is that stand?
So the council has commissioned a study on Smart Track, another study specifically dealing with one of the most difficult parts of the line. So basically, we're still at the study phase for that, and there's still a lot of questions to be answered about the funding and exactly a lot of questions were raised during the campaign whether or not the funding mechanism that he had proposed would work. So basically, it's still a lot of work to be done on that, and so it'll be some time before we know exactly what the next steps will be.
You know, I have to think that there's a warehouse somewhere in the city of Toronto that just has transit studies in it.
Yep.
And so we're now again going to see another study. For how long is this going to take?
Essentially, the thing is, this one at the moment has a lot of political buy-in because it coincides with the province's plans to electrify the GO corridors east and west of the city, and so you would think that the province would have a lot of interest in making sure it happens. So the stars seem to be aligning at the moment, and so this seems to be the one that has the most support behind it. So it does have a chance of going forward for sure.
Now, you talked about the province, and the province has committed approximately $15 billion over the next 10 years for the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area for transit. And so the mayor is going to be fighting for transit dollars with his fellow mayors in Peel and Hamilton and Markham and Vaughan and elsewhere. How's that stacking up?
Well, I think there's no doubt that Toronto will get a large amount of that funding, just given that Toronto's the biggest city in the province, and that everyone knows that traffic congestion here is quite bad and needs to be improved. What I think is going to be interesting is whether or not the Smart Track plan sucks up any money from the other projects that are already planned for Toronto. So that would be like the Shepherd LRT line and the Finch LRT line, which were not the mayor's priorities for sure. And so there is some concern from people who support those two lines whether or not there will still be money left over for them. It'll also be interesting to see whether or not it affects the Scarborough subway plan. I mean, that seems pretty locked down at the moment, but it is more expensive than the LRT line plan there. And so you just wonder how much pressure really the funding for Smart Track will put on some of those other Toronto projects.
Now, at the top of the interview, you mentioned that the mayor went up the street to Queen's Park asking for money on two different occasions and came away with nothing.
Yeah.
The mayor had a lot of high-powered provincial Liberal support. What do you see as the relationship between City Hall and Queen's Park?
Yeah, I mean, Tory's one of his main pitches during the election was that he was the best positioned leader to work with the higher levels of government to win funding for Toronto, and so far that hasn't materialized. And I don't know if that's too surprising. I mean, it's still early days. I don't know if anyone expected the province to come knocking with like hundreds of millions of dollars in the first couple of months. But what was interesting is that they just seemed on the opposite pages of things. Like, so when the money to plug this hole in the budget fell through, and it turned out that the province wasn't going to bail out the city on that. There was just mixed messaging. Like on the same day, you had Tory and provincial minister giving different accounts of what had happened, and it just did not seem like that they were on the same page. So I think I'm not quite sure if Tory's concerned at this point. He says that conversations are ongoing, but it did certainly seem that there was a lack of coordination that you would not have expected given given the Tory's pitch during the election.
Mm-hmm. And just briefly, he also went up to Ottawa looking for dollars for infrastructure and transit. How successful was he on that front?
Well, he didn't secure anything tangible yet. I think I think that it's less important to get money from the federal government. I think that the main source of funding for these big infrastructure transit projects is going to be the province. And so I'm not sure again if he expected really to have anything tangible from Ottawa yet, and I think those conversations will keep going on as well.
Ben, thank you so much for sharing your insights at City Hall, and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
We'll be back with The Point.